Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. Thank you for being here. If this is your first time, this is a pretty good place to start. We are going to be talking about boundaries today. And if you have ever caught yourself saying the same darn thing to your teen over and over and over again, we're going to help you address that. Buckle up. If this is your first time, thank you for being here. If you have been here many times, thank you for coming back. Today we are talking about boundaries because Courtney is terrible with boundaries. Just joking. It's not Courtney.
Is a work in progress.
I'm always working on boundaries too. Like before we hit record, we're like, man, this is actually something I need in my life right now. And I have a 17-year-old who thinks he knows everything, thinks he should be able to do whatever he wants, and thinks that his parents are complete idiots.
That sounds so familiar.
Wait, you've experienced that too?
Yeah. I wonder if we have the same team.
I wonder. They both like basketball. Oh, well. So if you have ever felt like you've said the same thing to your kid over and over, like, hey, be home on time, get your homework done, put your phone away, and nothing changes, this podcast is for you. And if you're like most parents, when your teen doesn't change, when you tell them these things, you start to feel frustrated and disrespected. And sometimes you just wonder, like, why won't they just listen? But we're here to tell you, like, maybe the problem isn't your teen. Maybe you actually have a boundary problem. And so today we're going to show you why most parenting boundaries don't work. We're going to show you some of the biggest mistakes that are actually making things worse. And we're going to teach you a simple way to create boundaries that work without constant fights, without having to remind your teen over and over and over, and without feeling like the bad guy. And just remember, we want to make boundaries something that not only can you do and they work for you, but they don't suck for your teen. And that is possible. Let me just ask you, Courtney, have you ever told your teen, hey, I want you to be home at a certain time, and then that time comes and goes, but your teenager has not yet come home? Has that ever happened to you?
Yes, a few times. Yeah, there are some consequences, like made a curfew earlier next time so that he can be home on time. But again, it's not something that ever sticks. So maybe that's not a boundary, right?
Well,
That's a consequence.
and so we're going to talk about this. This is perfect, by the way. Not only do you and I need this, I have multiple clients right now. I'm working with some mothers and a father that can all use this. Here's the thing. What I see a lot is when there's like a curfew given, like, hey, I want you home at midnight. And then the teen doesn't show up at midnight. Then the parent is like, you're late. We've talked about this. And then the teenager's like, yeah, but it's not a big deal. That one, I actually feel like I could see your teenager saying that exact thing. My teen would just pretend like he didn't hear me. And then what happens, you get more upset. I fall into the trap of like lecture dad, and I just want to lecture. And then your teenager gets defensive, and now you guys are both arguing. And now in the heat of the moment, you're like, well, fine then. And you throw out this massive consequence, and it's something that you're probably not even going to follow through on. You're just mad, which, by the way, don't do consequences mad. Just like don't drink and drive, don't do consequences mad. Anyways, a few days later, the exact same thing happens again. And what most parents don't realize, they're not setting good boundaries. That's more of a request and a threat that is backed by frustration. And oftentimes we make one of the biggest mistakes where we are actually trying to control our teen. And Courtney, let me just ask you this. Has anyone ever tried to control you?
I'm sure they've tried.
Yeah. Did it work?
Probably didn't work out too well.
Yeah. How do you feel when people try to control you?
I push back. I'll do the opposite for sure.
Yeah, funny thing is, I have asked that to parents all over the world, and they're like, yeah, I hate it when people try to control me. And I'm like, funny thing is, guess how your teen feels? And we see this pattern where you try and control your teen, and that creates resistance. And so they push back, and then you push back, and you get into this power struggle. And it doesn't work. It disconnects you from your team and it causes frustration. So here's the shift that we want to share with you guys. A boundary is not about what your team does. A boundary is about what you will do. Now, this is really important. I want you to just highlight this in your mind. Boundaries are not about your team. A boundary is about you. Because here's the truth. I tell this to people sometimes, especially dads. Dads have a hard time with this. You can't control your team.
Mm-hmm.
And for dads that struggle, it's like the bigger they are, the more they struggle. They're like, Psh, I'm like 6'5", 280 pounds, look like The Rock. I can control my team. It's like,
We're not talking physical control. Like,
yeah, like even if you physically control them, you're not going to be able to control them emotionally, and they're going to resent you, and it's not going to work well. So when we can't control something, I always like to encourage people, shift your attention to whatever you can control. Courtney, if you can't control your team, what can you control?
I can control myself, the things that I do or say,
Really good.
how I respond or react to the choices that they make.
Yeah, exactly. And this is where most parents get it wrong. They're more focused on their teenager, this entity that is outside of their control, rather than they are focused on themselves. And so what happens is they end up building boundaries that are built around things that they can't control. And then they wonder why their boundaries keep failing. What I want to do is I want to give you a super simple formula for boundaries. The problem with simplicity is you guys are going to think, oh man, that's just too easy. How could that possibly work? No, I'm telling you, this is super simple. This is all you need. The next time you want to set a boundary with your team, just use this framework. If you blank, I will blank. Now, it's super simple, but there are some important things to factor in here. If you blank, that's usually where you fill in that blank with something outside of your control. Like, look, teenager, if I let you go out tonight, if you come home late, that's outside of my control. If you come home late, I will choose not to let you borrow my car. I control that one. Like, if I have to, I'll just keep the keys in my pocket or I'll hide them, like whatever I need to do. But if you come home late, I will control this thing within my control. That's it. That is how to set a boundary. Courtney, have you ever tried that simple little framework?
I'm sure I have. Part of my problem might have been sticking to that framework. Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe one additional important nuance. The second blank. So the first one, if you come home late or don't get good grades or punch your brother, I don't know. The first one is outside of your control. The second one, not only does it need to be within your control, it needs to be something that you are actually willing to do. I remember a time my kids were fighting and I was like, guys, and I think they were playing like Minecraft, and like the fight started digitally, like one sibling hit the other sibling with a sword and it was like a diamond sword. So it did real damage.
Yeah.
Which meant in the real world, the one brother had to punch the other brother and they're like going at it. And I'm like, guys, if you don't stop fighting, I'm going to throw your Xbox in the trash. That's a crappy, I will, because that Xbox cost us hundreds of dollars. There's no way I'm going to throw that away. Like, it would have been better to be like, guys, if you keep fighting, I'm going to take the cord to the Xbox and I'm going to hide it. And you won't be able to play. Like, that is something that I can follow through. So a little nuance to that. Yes, it needs to be something that you can control. It also needs to be something that you are willing to follow through on. So any questions about that formula? Pretty clear cut.
It's very simple. Yes.
Yeah. So some of the ones that I like to do, like I try and pay for my kids' cell phones as long as possible because that gives me control over something. Like, hey, if you don't do blank, I'm going to take away your cell phone privilege. They're like, you can't do that. I'm like, yeah, I can call up the cell phone company right now and just have it turned off. It's something within my control. It's something I'm willing to do. If you come home late, I'll choose not to let you borrow my vehicle. The one that we struggled with my oldest was like, dude, if you treat this vehicle like your own personal locker where you just throw, like, I'm going to take away your driving privilege. So,
Hmm.
Courtney, how could you use this in your life?
One boundary that I have set recently was grades or missing assignments. I can't force him to do his homework. And there was a lot of things outside of my control. And at home, I just saw him so distracted by games or his phone. And it's no wonder you're not doing your homework. So, one thing I could control was taking away like his controllers for his PlayStation during the week. He can have them on the weekend, but as long as he gets all of his homework done throughout the week, he can have it back on the weekend. I also his screen time on his phone to 10:30. So his phone shuts off at 10:30 at night. That's a boundary that I have set. It goes into effect without me having to do it every single day, and it actually makes a big difference. He hasn't had missing assignment, and he's actually been a little kinder. Like he talks a little bit more. He's just not glued to that phone all the time and so late. So I actually really like those boundaries that I stuck to. The curfew one I'm still working on, but yeah, those are things that I can do and they just fall into place without me having to do anything.
Good. And here's something I would add. If you're just starting out with boundaries, don't go for the biggest, hardest boundaries first. Do some smaller, easy ones and show your kid, like, look, I'm on your side. I want you to have this thing, but I also want you to do this other thing to earn the privilege. That's why I always recommend that parents have the rights versus privilege conversation. That way you can set a boundary. And notice this is super important. You are not trying to force your teenager to do the thing. Like, I'm not trying to force my teen to come home on time or turn their homework in. I'm just trying to create a situation where they have the power to choose. And based on that choice, they also have the power to earn a privilege, which I provide as a dad. This form of boundary setting, it actually empowers your teenager. It also empowers you as a parent. Courtney, did I
Yeah.
read your face correctly? Did you have something you wanted to add?
You did read my face correctly. It's ironic that we're talking about this because just yesterday I was talking to my best friend about our little kids. They're 9 and 7. We both have a 9.
I don't remember this conversation. You were talking to me about this?
My other bestie.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, sorry.
Yes, yes. Sorry, I should have clarified. But we were talking about our little kids and how so many kids, including our own, are entitled in so many ways. And I was like, girl, we have to get on this and set the boundaries or make these changes. She's like, it's too late. Like, I'm going to get so much pushback. And I was like, it is not too late. So I was going to ask you, like, do you ever think it's too late to set boundaries or make a shift in your parenting? I know how I feel, but
Yeah, this is a good question. When I share like boundaries with parents and they're like, how do your kids do that? I'm like, we got lucky. We started relatively young, but my oldest like was on a mission to give me and my wife a run for our money. I wouldn't say that it's ever too late, but I would say this. Like, I had a mom the other day that was like, my kid won't do anything I ask, and I can't even remember what he did. And she's like, so I held out my phone or my hand, and I'm like, give me your phone. And the kid gives her a phone or gives her his phone. This kid is like 6'4",
hmm.
big football player. I'm like, man, what would have happened if he wouldn't have given you your his phone? Like, could you wrestle him to the ground and take that from him? And she's like, no. And I'm like, your kid is actually more willing to do what you asked. Like, he didn't have to give you his phone, and yet he chose to. And she's like, oh, yeah. The thing is, if you try and take too much of your teen's power and autonomy, they will take their power back using drastic measures. And this is really good for us as parents because there are things that you think you can control that your teen is like, no, I'll just crawl out the window. It's like, oh, dang. Yeah, it turns out I can control the front door, but I can't control whether or not you leave the house. So if you choose to leave the house, I will not give you the Wi-Fi password. I can control that one. Well, guess what? He might be like, well, great. I'm going to sneak out of the window. I'm going to go to my friend's house where I know the Wi-Fi password. Yeah. Okay. Well, when you come home, because I'm sure those people are going to get sick of you because I'm already sick of you. So it's only a matter of time before they get sick of you. When you get home, here are the boundaries. And the secret is, like, doesn't matter how old your kids are. I'm working with one mom. She's like, my kid's 19. Yeah, well, he still lives at your house. He still benefits from all of these privileges. You just need to get madder, or you need to get better. Don't get mad. Boundaries when you're mad don't work. You just need to get better at managing what's within your control and let him manage what's within his control. And here's the crazy thing. If your kid is older, like let's say 16 and older, and you've never had this boundary conversation, and they just thought like all of the privileges in life were rights, and they're like, I just deserve all of it. And then you have the rights and privileges conversation, and then you set a boundary that's like, hey, if you blank, I will blank. And they're like, what the? Like, they just get all mad. Well, of course. Like, this is new to them. You just completely changed their reality. The truth is, I have coached moms that have like 37-year-old children that still need to set a boundary. And
Yeah.
it's not too late. It is never too late. I actually coached, like, this is a crazy thing about coaching parents and teens. Almost everybody fits into that. And I coached a married, like a mother, a wife, and she's like, I got to set a boundary with my husband. I'm like, yeah,
Mhm.
like better now than ever. Let's get started. So, no, it's not too late. But yes, it is slightly easier the younger you start. But Courtney and I were talking about this before we hit record. Boundaries aren't the type of thing that you just set it and forget it. Like, my kids are pretty well trained. I have a 17-year-old, the same one I was just telling you, that thinks his parents are idiots. Like, we are having to revisit the boundary thing. And it's nice when it can be simple and it can be clear. And it's just simply, hey, if you do that, I will blank. You have the power to do that. Like, I'm not trying to control whether or not you do that, but if you do that, here's how I will, and here's who I will be. Okay.
Yeah, I agree. And if you get pushback, I mean, that's just normal, right? That's a normal response to something that is new or they don't like. That doesn't mean you don't do it. One thing that you have taught me that has really come in handy is asking my children, like getting them involved with, I don't want to say the word consequence because we're not talking about consequences, but getting them involved. So I've asked my son, like, what do you think is fair as a consequence for this? Or if this boundary is broken, what do you think is fair? What should we do? And he will come up with things. At first, he's like, I don't know. I don't care. I don't know. But now he will actually give me input because I think he realizes it does hold some weight.
That is the quickest way to get buy-in, by the way. We're going to talk about that here in just a minute. Real quick, though, I want to talk to you about a few pitfalls when it comes to this. Because as simple as this formula is, parents mess it up all the time. And I don't want that to be you. I don't want you to fall into this trap where you're sabotaging yourself. So the first pitfall is a lot of parents think that boundaries are meant to control their teenager. And if your goal is to make your teenager behave, you've lost. Boundaries are not about controlling them. They're about empowering them to make a decision and empowering you to be the parent that you want to be. The second pitfall, making boundaries too complicated. I had one mom. If she's listening to this podcast, I want you to know I still love you. You're fantastic. She had an Excel spreadsheet about boundaries. It was too complicated, too long. There are multiple rules. Like, you want to be clear. If it's too complicated, your teen doesn't actually know what matters. And it's hard for you. It's hard for your teen. Simple equals clear. Clear equals effective. Another pitfall, not following through. We talked about this one. My boundary where I'm like, guys, if you keep fighting, I'm going to throw the Xbox away. Crappy, stupid boundary. I was not willing to follow through. So get really good at making it something that you are willing to follow through on. And guess what? Most of us listening to this podcast, we were able to go on a date, be away from home for several hours without a cell phone. I'm just saying, kids, they can manage. So make sure that there's something you are willing to follow up on. Another pitfall, focusing on what you cannot control. You can't control your teen's attitude, their effort, their choices, any of that. So don't build boundaries. Like, yeah, that fits in that first line. If you, whatever I can't control, then I will. But don't try and reinforce a boundary with a consequence that you cannot control. And the last one, I get this all the time, especially with members of my church, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, LDS people. Some people call us Mormons. I don't care. Whatever. Don't set a boundary just because your neighbors said that you should do it, or your church leader, or your mother-in-law. Set boundaries that are in line with how you want to parent and who you want to be. Just because a church leader suggested it, or just because your mom's the Relief Society president and she thinks you should parent this way, don't fall in that trap. Make sure your boundaries align with you. And if it's not aligned with you, don't do it. Your teen will feel you parenting out of alignment. Okay, so let's talk about leveling up your boundaries. Courtney jumped the gun here, involving your teen. Instead of telling your teen, like, hey, here's what it is, start asking. One of the examples that I really like to ask my teens, especially with the curfew thing, why do you think I want you to be home on time? Courtney, what was your answer to that?
Nothing good happens after midnight.
Yeah.
And I think we both agreed so that we can go to bed.
Yeah, that was my excuse. Courtney's, nothing good happens after midnight. Mine is, I just want to go to bed. Like, let your teen explore that. Hey, why do you think I want you home on time? Why do you think I don't want you fighting with your siblings? Why do you think, like, let them explore and practice thinking like an adult. Now they're thinking, now they're engaged. Another little secret hack, help them think ahead of time. What do you think will be the hardest part when it comes to coming home on time? What do you think the hardest thing will be about staying caught up with your homework? Now you're coaching instead of controlling your teenager. And this is one that Courtney talked about. Let your teen help create the consequence. And here's something to remember about consequences. Consequences are neutral. There's good ones and there's not so good ones. Like, what do you think? Like, one of the things, it's not exactly the same, but I'll ask my kids, like, how would it benefit you to come home late? And they're like, it won't, I'll get in trouble. I'm like, no, there's a benefit there. What could it be? Oh, I get to hang out with my friends longer. I get to have more fun. Yeah, awesome. What's the benefit if you actually come home on time? Oh, I'll get to use the car again and go hang out with my friends and have fun tomorrow night. Yeah, now which benefit do you want? Like, you're just empowering your teen to increase their awareness so they can make better choices. And here's the thing, you'll be surprised. If you ask your teen, like, what do you think is a fair consequence if you come home late? Once they get good at this, they'll actually give you pretty good answers. Sometimes they'll be more strict than you would be, and then you can position yourself as the good guy. Another tip to level up your boundaries, have the rights versus privileges conversation. This is huge. Help them understand that privileges are earned and they're connected to their choices. So if you come home late, that's connected to a privilege that I control. That helps your teen understand, oh, this is actually kind of fair, and it's not just random that mom's making up on the spot. Now, I have a football meeting to go to. So, Courtney, we gotta go quick.
Okay.
What do you think about setting unpopular boundaries with your teen?
And I think it's necessary, but I think it's setting a good example for them. You setting boundaries and sticking to them will hopefully empower your teen in other areas of their life to set boundaries and hold them, even if it's the unpopular boundary.
Yeah, the example I always give. I have a daughter. She's going to be a teenager someday. She's going to go out with a boy someday, and I know boys. I know what's on their minds, and it just scares me. I hope that if she's ever with a boy and he's getting frisky and going a little too far, and she's like, hey, stop. And he's like, no, I don't want to stop. I'm hoping she can set an unpopular boundary and be like, look, if you don't stop, I will never go out with you again. In fact, I'll never talk to you again. It's an unpopular boundary. The boy's going to be disappointed, unhappy, whatever. I want her to understand through experience, because I've set boundaries with her that were unpopular and she was mad and she called me names. And yeah, I'm your dad. This is who I'm going to be. And I want her to have that example so she can be like, yeah, I'm not okay with that. This is who I'm going to be. I don't care how much you whine, complain, whatever. So setting boundaries, it's important because how you set boundaries as a parent will model and provide the example that your teens need to be able to set boundaries even when their friends push back, even when people are upset. So how you set boundaries is how your teen learns to set their boundaries. If you fold, they're going to fold. It's just how it works. But if you can be like, no, I'm going to stand my ground on this, your teen will learn that. Okay.
No,
I know. It's like that old song. Anyways, I'm not going to sing that for you. Let's wrap this up. If you're repeating yourself all the time, you probably don't have a boundary that's simple enough and strong enough to really help motivate your teen. And that's not a teen failure. In fact, it's not even a parenting failure. It's just information. It's signaling to you that, hey, we can tighten this up. I can give my teen more power to choose and follow through with a consequence. This helps you go from frustration as a parent to leadership and modeling. This helps you go from trying to change your teen to deciding who you are going to be regardless of how your teen shows up. And these boundaries, they're not about controlling your teen. They're about empowering your teen. And when you empower your teen, you also empower yourself. Okay, that's everything we got for you on boundaries. Courtney, any last words?
nope. Set a boundary and stick with it. Start practicing.
Yeah, really good one. Guys, if you haven't set boundaries, this is going to be a sucky conversation at the beginning. I'm sorry, but the more your teen starts to get with the program, the more they're going to realize, oh, dang, I can earn more privileges by following these boundaries. I'm telling you, it will empower your teen. Okay, thank you for being here. You guys are fantastic. If this podcast episode or any of the podcast episodes has been helpful, please go leave us a 5-star review. It helps other parents just like you find the help that they've been looking for. And written reviews help even more than stars. And feel free, share this podcast. Let's all work together on this mission to help as many parents of teenagers as possible. We'll talk to you guys soon.